content note before we start. In today's episode, my guest Bex recounts a past experience in which a colleague used transphobic language while discussing a transgender character on television. The language is censored, but the experience itself may still be difficult for some listeners. Please take care of yourself as you listen. You're always welcome to pause, skip ahead, or come back to this episode when it feels right. The sensitive content occurs from the 14th minute and 52-second mark to the 16th minute, 36-second mark. And before we jump in, I just want to say a huge thank you to all my listeners and supporters, and a special shout out to my 10 Season 1 guests, Casey, Becky, Dallas, Lindsay, Haley, Gabrielle, Rachel, Josie, Gabby, and Bex. You all made this first season unforgettable, and the lesbian class wouldn't exist without you. Thank you, everyone, from the bottom of my heart. And here's to Season 2, rebranding as the Gay Teachers Lounge. Hi, this is Celeste Taylor, and you found yourself in the lesbian class. Whether you're painting kindness rocks, color coding your bookshelf to create a rainbow, or wrapping holiday gifts, I'm so happy you're here, and I hope you get a few takeaways. Ring, ring. Class is in session. Today on the podcast, I'm thrilled to welcome Bex, a kindergarten teacher and longtime advocate for inclusive learning environments. With over a decade in education, including experience as a teaching assistant and children's theater director, they bring a unique perspective on what it means to create classrooms where all students feel seen and valued. They're out in their classroom, on campus, and in life, and they're here to share stories of joy, challenges, and the small but powerful ways queerness can make a difference in education. Bex is transmasculine, non-binary, and queer. Welcome to the lesbian class, Bex.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing this on your winter break.
Of course.
Well, to get us started, when did you realize being out as a non-binary educator was important to you?
I think I realized that when I started my first job out of undergrad, which was working for a traveling children's theater company. Oftentimes we would travel to really rural towns. The smallest town I went to had a population of 200 people. The first town that we went to was one of those smaller towns. And I remember a kiddo coming up to me and asking what my pronouns were, which I was surprised by because it was a red state and a rural area in a red state. And I felt nervous about sharing my pronouns, but I did because it meant something to this kid, and their eyes just lit up. And I was like, oh, this is special. This is important. It's important for me to be visible in these areas. Even though it was scary, it was important for me to dress the way I dress and have my hair the way it is. And that same kid, several years later, I met this kid in 2018. And in 2020, they were able to find me on Instagram and told me that seeing someone who was assigned female at birth, but dressed more masculine in a place where that just didn't happen meant everything to them, and they were able to move out of that town, and that seeing me showed them that there was a way out. And that was extremely powerful, that just existing as me. I didn't even have to say anything. I just had to unapologetically look and dress how I am. It meant something to that kid, and I think I've had that impact on many kids over the years. That wasn't the only interaction I had with kids like that on tour, and it's not the only interaction I've had with kids like that working even in elementary school.
Wow, that is a very special, powerful memory and experience you had, especially, and that was your first year doing that?
That was the first week doing that job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it was almost as though the powers that be just gave you that moment to show you right from the beginning, be you.
Yeah, it was kind of like I call it my ring of keys moment, my first ring of keys moment. I don't know if you know Alison Bechdel's book Fun Home, and there's also a musical of it, but she talks about when she was a kid being at a convenience store in the mountains and seeing this butch lesbian with a ring of keys, and it just on her belt loop, and it just blew her mind. And she didn't know that she was queer, but seeing this butch lesbian wearing this ring of keys just opened up her world as like, oh, this is an option of someone I can be. And I think this was in like the 70s or 80s.
Wow.
So for me, that was my first ring of keys moment. And I look forward to those moments because I didn't necessarily have those growing up. I had a couple, but not a ton of visibly queer people around me.
No, I definitely didn't. And it's funny, I love the synchronicity that's happening right now because I literally this morning saw one of her cartoons pop up on my Instagram feed and I've heard about her books. I've never read, I think she has two books, or I don't know if she has more than the
I
two.
don't actually know, but Fun Home, Chef's Kiss would highly recommend. It's a graphic novel also, so it's
Yes.
fun.
I want to say the second one, no, maybe the second one's not also. Anyway, she came up on my radar probably only, gosh, within this last year. I never heard boo about her and then had found out about her graphic novel. And then I saw the cartoon and I thought, it's something, this cartoon with one gal in bed and one gal with a plate of eggs and hopping up by the bed and something along the lines of Twyla, one of them's not happy that the other one's a morning person. That sort of
Classic
joke.
couple moment.
Classic couple moment. And I thought to myself, it's so interesting that you brought her up in that book because I still haven't read it. Okay, I guess I'm going to
Yeah.
read it soon.
You should also listen to I don't know if you're a musical theater person, but if you get the chance to listen to the soundtrack for Fun Home, it's phenomenal. And I think the most lesbian song in existence is in it. It's called Changing My Major, and it's about her wanting to change her college major to the girl she's seeing, Joan. So the whole song is I'm changing my major to Joan. It's my new major in college.
Sounds hysterical.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
great.
Thanks. Thanks for the rec.
Of
That
course.
almost sounds like what I'm going to be asking you at the end of
Ooh,
our talk, but
perfect.
we might circle back.
Yeah.
Well, so speaking of funny things, have your students ever said anything affirming or funny about your identity to you, or have you overheard them saying funny or affirming things?
Okay, I do have one funny story, and I don't know if it's necessarily affirming, but I think it was a really cool teaching moment. And it also did give me gratitude that I work in a school in a district where I know I can safely have these conversations. But I teach kindergarten. This was at the end of the last school year. And, it's May. My kids are all rolling on the floor. They don't want to be there. I don't want to be there. We are all hanging on by a thread. And I'm getting ready to put on my teacher voice and be like, y'all, we need to focus. So I ask, what is 10 minus 2? And as I'm getting ready to pull them in, one of my 6-year-olds stands up and goes, everybody listen, I am gay. And I was like, great, buddy. Thanks for sharing. What's 10 minus 2? And then no sooner had he said that, all of my other students started fighting for some reason, going, no, I'm gay. No, I'm gay. No, I am. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What is this chaos? And I was trying to move on. However, another one of my kids said, that's a bad word. And I was like, well, I can't move on from that because I'm not okay leaving a lesson with all of my students thinking that gay is a bad word. So I just did a quick little lesson because, I took a queer theory class in college, but I wasn't going to go all queer theory on my 5 and 6-year-olds, especially because I needed to know what is 10 minus 2. That was the important goal at the time. But I said, friends, real quick, just know gay is not a bad word. Gay is just something you can be. It can mean a boy loves a boy or a girl loves a girl. But right now, I really need to know what 10 minus 2 is. And then another one of my students goes, a girl can love a girl? I said, yes. And she went, I'm gay. I was like, I couldn't even teach at that point. We were about to go to specials. And I was like, you know what? We're going to talk about what 10 minus 2 is when we get back. But it was just silly. They had no idea what that word meant. They were just feeling contrary. And goofy and just like arguing with each other. But I guess it felt good to be able to have a conversation like that and know I wouldn't get repercussions. And if I did, that my admin and superintendent would have my back, because I know not all teachers have that luxury.
Yeah.
And then just a cool moment I had a trans boy in my class last year, and he had his hair down to his butt. And this year he came to visit his first grade teacher for back to school night, but he stopped by my classroom first, and all of his hair was cropped off. He had the same exact haircut as me, and his mom was like, he wanted to show you his hair before he went and saw his new teacher. And he was like, my hair's short like yours now. And I was like, oh, just warmed my heart so much to know that I was able to be a trans masculine adult that he could see every single day, and I didn't have to say anything about it or do anything about it. I was just there. So kind of similar to just another Ring of Keys moment. You don't realize the impact you're having by just being.
I love that because you have a career. You are out there in society.
Yeah.
And showing all these kids that being gay is no different than being straight. We're people. We have careers. We have relationships. We are alive.
Right.
And that's the really affirming part for me, too, is that gay students can look at queer educators and not only see themselves in them, but also say, okay, cool. Being gay is not going to fuck my life, essentially, right? I can
be an option for me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's allowed. I can be successful. I can be loved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though. When the first student stood up and said, I'm gay, I'm curious, and it was at the end of the school year.
Yes.
How do you introduce yourself at the beginning of the school year to your kids?
Yeah. So I don't talk about my sexuality. If they were to ask me, I mean, honestly, if a student asks if I have a boyfriend, I just say no, because I don't. Also, I'm single at this point in my life, so I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have a girlfriend. I've had a couple students ask, do you have a girlfriend? And then I say no, because I don't at this point in time. But in terms of my identity, I do tell my students that I use they, them pronouns, which in kindergarten can feel big because we don't learn pronouns grammatically till like second grade. But I give us the opportunity on the first day by reading a book called What Are Your Words? It's a children's book. And it's really cool. It's about this non-binary kid who kind of changes his pronouns with the day. He has an uncle who uses they, them pronouns. And they kind of go throughout the book and they're like, she, her doesn't feel good today. He, him doesn't feel good today. And they keep talking to people in town who all have different pronouns. And by the end of the day, the kid is like, today they, them feels good for me. And here are some other words to describe me. Happy, creative. I model for them. You know, you may have never met someone who uses they, them to describe themselves. So you can talk about Teacher Bex. Oh, also, I go by Teacher Bex.
Okay. I had a teacher Ash on a previous episode. Oh, nice. Hi, Ash.
Hi, Ash. Solidarity to teacher prefixes.
Teacher prefix.
But yeah, so I say, you can say Teacher Bex is my teacher. They are silly. I like to be in their class. So I just model it for them. And then it is funny to hear them try to advocate for me because their hearts are there. Their brains are just learning. I have so much more patience for children learning how to use they, them pronouns than I do for adults, quite frankly. But it's funny, sometimes an adult will misgender me and my kids will be like, no, she uses they, them. And I'm like, you're so close. And thank you for standing up for me. Love it.
That is so cute.
It's so cute. I love them.
Talking about pronouns. So you mentioned in your questionnaire being misgendered by your other queer coworkers.
Yeah.
Not even your straight coworkers. And I'm wondering if you can talk about how that impacts your day-to-day.
Yeah, it's been challenging. It's definitely caused me to have firmer boundaries on who I have friendships and relationships with outside of the job. When I started at this school, I would say about half of the staff at my school, you know, between teachers and paraprofessionals and admin are queer. So I was really excited to be on a staff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But I've noticed that some of my coworkers think that being queer gives them a pass at learning how to use they, them pronouns. I remember hanging out with one of my coworkers outside of work who is a lesbian and also polyamorous, and I'm also polyamorous. And that was really all I knew about her. So I was excited to hang out with her. And we went back to her place and we were watching a show with a transgender character in it. And she blatantly, like, trigger warning for slur, but blatantly was calling this person and was like, look at that. That's, and I got just so uncomfortable. And I was thinking, I thought that I would be in a safe space with a lesbian polyamorous woman in her home. And we also had a bisexual coworker with us hanging out. And there was another character in the show who was a masculine woman who used she, her pronouns, but liked to be called daddy by her partners. And my other bisexual coworker was like, I don't get that. Why would you go by she, her, but also be okay being called daddy? Like, make up your mind. And I flipped, I stood up, and I literally said, all right, that's enough transphobia for one night. And I walked out. And my coworker texted me and was like, what was that about? And I was like, I'm not okay with the use of that word. And the way you and this other coworker were speaking tells me that you don't see me as trans. If you did, you would use my pronouns and you wouldn't use words like, and she was just like, I'm a part of the community too, and you don't know my background, you don't know my life. I'm sorry you were offended, but nothing offensive was said, like verbatim.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, this is just a reminder that not every queer person is a trans ally, unfortunately.
It's quite a big issue in the community, isn't it? I mean, from so much I've been reading and seeing when I go into queer spaces, no turfs allowed. There's all this signage, I think it is an issue still for our
Yeah, it
community.
definitely is. And I think maybe this is a hot take, but I think a lot of my straight coworkers, because my district is so big on DEI and educating about diversity in the workplace and inclusion in the workplace, I think my straight coworkers are so worried about being canceled or being offensive that they actually work harder on it, which I don't want to scare people, but I do appreciate that they make the effort to learn my pronouns. But I have noticed there's this vibe amongst many of my queer coworkers where it's just kind of that, like, sassy, gay, I don't care about anything vibe, being sassy and biting with my words as part of my personality, just kind of the toxic part of gay culture, like throwing shade and stuff,
Yeah.
and just really uncomfortable taking accountability. So it has been surprising to see that my straight coworkers will use my pronouns and many of my queer coworkers will not. There's another non-binary person on admin at my school, and we have a lot of camaraderie about that with each other. Like, how many times were you misgendered by another queer person today? So we at least have each other to talk to about it, and that's helpful to just have a thought partner. But it is interesting. I think some queer people who are not trans think that because they're part of the LGBT community, they don't have to do that work to rewire their brain. But it's especially interesting to me in education because, right now I'm teaching kindergartners that C makes the sound, but soon they're going to learn that that's not the only sound it makes. It also makes the S sound. So we've been unlearning and relearning grammar rules our whole lives. And I think in adulthood, some people think, well, I've learned all I need to about grammar. I'm 40, I'm 50 years old. Nothing's going to change. But the thing is, them pronouns to describe a single person has been around since Shakespearean times. It's not new. It's always been around. It's been silenced, but it's not new. And I wish more adults realized that we need to do the work to rewire our brains because we've been taught harmful thought patterns.
I think that is one of the reasons why there are a lot of people, shocking for me to hear so many queer colleagues of yours are misgendering you. But I was thinking about this too after I read your questionnaire, and I was thinking to myself, and this is another reason why to hear you say your straight colleagues misgender you less than your queer colleagues do, that was kind of a mindfuck for me because when I had read your questionnaire and I was just reading that first part and I thought, well, it's probably because their queer colleagues are, say, in the staff lounge, and they'll hear the straight colleagues refer to you using she, her pronouns. And then your queer colleagues will be there and say you're there too. And then because of peer pressure, right, or because of wanting to be accepted, right, not to be looked at as a shitster, or so for me, when I was thinking about your queer colleagues being the ones to misgender you more than your straight colleagues, that wasn't making sense to me, because really what I was thinking was going on was a peer pressure issue, or you know how we socially signal, right? Well, how social signaling works, where we'll tell people who we are, what our values are, etc., whatever, by what we say. Now, if we're in the staff lounge and I hear, Mrs. Baraha talking about you and saying, Bex, she's awesome, her kids and she, blah, 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 whatever, all using she, her, blah, blah. And I'm there and I'm thinking to myself, Bex is they, them, right? But I don't say anything because A, I'm not strong enough to not challenge Mrs. Baraha, so to speak, in that way, but to say, oh yeah, I saw Bex in their class too, and their winter performance was awesome. And because that would be me telling Mrs. Braha and whomever else, I'm more affirming than you are. I am, I think there's that. I think people, right, and this is what Gabby, my previous guest, and I just got into too, is that it's so ingrained in us that we want to be accepted and part of the group and not cast out, right? And so if people hear the majority referring to you with female pronouns, they probably will not refer to you with your correct pronouns, right? Your they, them pronouns, because they're not wanting to be seen in a negative light. And their brains are probably signaling to them it's not safe right now to do that, or they don't want to create waves, or other thoughts I was having is just it is interesting. If you had one strong colleague, someone who's so strong in their convictions, it would be interesting to see that strong, very convicted person always using they, them pronouns for you. That one strong person could potentially be strong enough to control a room. And then it would be interesting to see if everyone then follows suit. And then everyone is using your correct pronouns in situations like that.
So that's interesting you say that. So my teammate, the other kindergarten teacher at my school, love her. We're a match made in heaven. She's my work wifey. I'm her work hubby. We are so tight. We're never leaving each other. She is straight and incredible with my pronouns, and she is that person. She's constantly correcting people when I'm around, when I'm not around. And it's interesting to see how uncomfortable some people get, and they almost can't speak. They're like, but she doesn't hold back. She says, no, you'll refer to my teammate with they, them pronouns, and doesn't let anyone continue talking until she's corrected. So that's awesome. And I know I have other coworkers who do the same for me. So it's great. I do have those people at my school. And there are some people whose heels are so dug in the sand. And I don't think they realize that they're dug in the sand. They care more about their own image than making trans people feel comfortable, I think. I think they're more worried about being labeled as a bigot or being canceled than they are about actually taking the time to change their language. And what I tell people is, if you're new to using they, them pronouns, I get it. I'm not going to cancel you. I'm not going to shit talk you. But I do want to see you actually making the effort to change your language. I didn't always know how to use they, them pronouns. I didn't even know those pronouns existed till early college. And people don't realize that, just like any new skill, you have to practice it. You can't just get good at something overnight. So I think there are the kind of people who are willing to do that work. And even when they misgender someone in their head, correct themselves in their brain, correct themselves out loud when they're talking to someone. If you're not exercising that muscle, you're never going to get better. And I think some people just get so paralyzed by fear, they don't actually make the effort to change their behavior. Some people will, the amount of times they'll say my name in a sentence because they're avoiding using a pronoun. I'm like, you're
Yeah.
making it so much harder on yourselves, y'all. Um,
True.
yeah, but I'm grateful to have my teammate and the other people at my school who fight so hard for me to be gendered correctly, and for our other admin who is non-binary to be gendered correctly, because it makes my life easier. I have a rule for myself. I don't correct people because it would take up so much time and energy. And
Mm.
I don't want to have to be the recipient of that discomfort of someone who's not ready to make the journey of changing their language. So I won't correct people. And I'm grateful to have allies at my school who will do that labor for me, because that's how it ought to be.
Yes, I did get into that with my other guest, Josie, about it's so helpful to have people who will speak up for us in moments when we're not able to speak up for ourselves in any situation.
It makes a big difference.
It does. And what is very telling, though, about your whole site in general is that if you have an admin who's getting misgendered, this is where top down, I mean, I'm not talking about mushroom management, I'm talking about the changes and your standard professional development on a Wednesday afternoon with a little let's turn and talk to a partner baloney, let's practice some pronouns baloney or whatever, inclusive, queer, whatever is on the agenda for the day. Obviously, stuff is not sticking, and it shows me and it tells me that your site, there's something going on there where there is this. I don't want to jump around between too many thoughts in my brain right now that I'm having, because I think I do kind of get myself jumbled sometimes. But
Same. I'm so tangential.
yes, thank you for being here with me.
Of course.
But you mentioned fear as being a reason why the misgendering can happen also. And I do believe that is also a contributing factor for some people. It depends, everyone's different. But the interesting thing is that they're so fear filled about misgendering you, so they don't try. Well, that doesn't make sense, because then they're making mistakes every time. And you would think that someone who's scared to do the wrong thing would not want to be making a mistake, but they misgender you, so they're doing the wrong thing over and over again. It is as simple as, because Casey, my very first guest on my podcast, and I have remained friends, right? And Casey is non binary. And I've caught myself when I talk with them almost dropping a female pronoun from time to time. And I think one time it did slip. And of course I caught myself and I said, da 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 da, whatever, female pronoun. Oh my God, sorry, and then just fixed it.
Yeah. It's that easy.
Ownership takes a minute. Not even a minute. It took me a second. A second
Right.
to say, even to say, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and
Yes.
then corrected
And then
myself.
just keep going. You don't need to dwell on it. You don't need to make a big thing of it. We're all going to be more comfortable if we move on. And what people don't
Yeah.
realize is, even before many of us, myself included, knew that they them pronouns were even a thing, I'm sure all of us have, like my little brother, I'm sure when I was growing up, I accidentally called him she and then went, oh, I mean he. Like, we're already doing that. We just
Right.
get so uncomfortable when we misgender a trans person because we're centering ourselves around that, because I do think cancel culture is a problem. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like cancel culture. Like, how are we going to grow if we can't take accountability and ownership for our mistakes? No one is perfect. There are certain
Right.
things that are inexcusable, but I don't think misgendering someone one time, actually, I'm very convicted in this. I firmly do not believe that misgendering someone one time should result in you being canceled or having a microscope put on you.
No.
I misgender people. We all misgender people. It's just a matter of doing it less and how we move forward from it. I cannot tell you how uncomfortable I get when someone misgenders me and then says, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm working on it. I promise I'm trying. I don't care that you're trying. Like, don't tell me all the work you've been doing to try. Like, I don't need to know about that part. I just want to see it in practice. And I'm a really easygoing guy. I really am. Hopefully I've been able to show that in this podcast, but I'm not the type of person to hold anger. I just want to see you trying. I don't want to hear that you're trying. I want to see that outcome and results of you trying and retraining your brain.
For sure, for sure. But I really feel for you
Thank
because
you.
I know I would be impatient with a lot of people, I think. And then I would feel frustrated because I would probably be all over the place like,
Yeah,
it's just
get
so
it right.
right. It's just it would be so frustrating. Even well, I do go through that actually. I do go
Yeah.
through that because how I present. I understand that the general population 99% of people, probably maybe all 100% of people, will look at me and see a straight woman. I understand that. But it doesn't mean that I'm okay with people presuming I'm straight. It irks me
Yes.
so much.
Yes.
It really does. And I've never been, I've never been a lesbian who will go because I know plenty of lesbians who intentionally cut their hair a certain way, wear certain clothes, wear the 100 chunky rings, etc., whatever the, septum piercing, tattoos, etc. I'm not going to change my aesthetic to prove I'm a lesbian and then to also have the world. So I have to deal with that frustration,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't, there's so much I could say right now.
I
I,
feel that. I feel your energy. It's so
right?
valid.
It's one of those things where I wouldn't feel comfortable with short hair.
Yeah.
As myself, as a queer woman, have already struggled so much with acceptance,
Hmm.
self-love, self-compassion, and for me to even think about presenting as a butch woman or a masked lesbian creates such a sense of loss of safety in my being. And I know it's past life and I know it's ancestral because I believe in all of this stuff. And there are a lot of layers, right, to everyone and our life experiences. So for me, that wouldn't work. I'm not interested in creating any more physical pain on this body that I have already experienced so much physical pain in this lifetime that I would not want to pierce anything else on my body, have a needle enter me. I loathe doctors, I loathe hospitals, I loathe the medical system. So I'm not going to be that woman. I'm not going to be that bad babe walking down the street all
Like, hey, mama's lesbian transmasc.
exactly. Oh
Yeah,
my
it's not
goodness.
you.
It's not me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Can I respond to that?
Please.
You brought up this issue of safety, right?
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were kind of alluding to what if I did look like a butch lesbian? Would that take away some of my safety when walking about the world? Were you kind of getting to that?
100%.
Okay, this is so interesting. So, some context is last September, so a little over a year ago, I left a 4.5 year relationship. And then I took 8 solid months to just work on myself and not date at all. So it had been a long time since I had dated new people. So back in May, I got back into the dating scene, got back on the apps, and largely I've been going on dates with femmes because that's largely who I'm attracted to. And it's so interesting in the city I live in. I live in a really big liberal city, and I talk to these femmes on dates who are talking a lot about what you're talking about, like not fitting in queer spaces, having people assume they're straight, not having any women or trans or non-binary people or queer people flirt with them because they look straight. And I don't have to deal with that at all. I walk into a queer space and people are like, oh, that's a gay person. And I actually love that. But a lot of it's contextual, right? Like looking like me might not feel safe in another city. And I even
Mm-hmm.
had a girl on a date say, sorry, I shouldn't complain about this. I have so much more privilege than you walking around. And I was like, in our city, I actually disagree with that. I'm white, I'm thin, and I look aesthetically cool and trendy in the city we live in. Men leave me the fuck alone. It's
Mm-hmm.
great. But I'm sure you deal with getting catcalled at all the time. And she was like, yeah, I definitely do. And honestly, it's all about context and where you live. For a big liberal city in the US like I live in, I actually have a ton of privilege walking around, and
Mm-hmm.
I think looking more masculine actually keeps me safer. So it's interesting because it's all about context.
It really is. And I spend way too much of my time in conservative enclaves where I live.
Yeah,
And
that sucks.
it does. And I know that it's colored my view of life, of the world, of men, of women. And I do know that I still have a layer that I have to unpack about fearing men, just in general. And I look at them when I'm out and about, and even seeing men makes me feel unsafe a large percentage of my days, right? Where I'll be out at the market and I'll just be, aware of my surroundings, and I'll think to myself, all negative thoughts are going through my mind when I'm looking at men. And I know that's a whole layer separate from my queer identity, right? I mean, I'm sure a lot of straight women have that same fear of them, just because, especially in our current time, there's quite a large percentage of them coming off as misogynistic. And it's worrisome, right? And then the whole smiling bullshit thing that is really, I don't know, it's present where I am. And currently I'm in a very conservative enclave, okay? Hoping to get myself the hell out of here very soon.
Yeah, I hope that for you too.
Thank you. But the fact is, men will smile. And if I don't smile back, I'll get a look. And I've even noticed that even if I do this, where it's just a little, barely a grin, not showing any teeth, right? Just, I'll get a look.
Ugh.
It's so bizarre. I wish I had some sort of researcher walking behind me to be documenting all of this, because the interactions are very odd.
Yeah.
And it's one of these things where I stop and I think, what do you want from me, dude? Why did I even make eye contact with him in the first place, right? And this is where then I start to get into my little bubble. Don't make eye contact. What kind of life is that? If I'm walking around thinking, okay, don't look at anyone, especially men, right?
I think that's so valid. And I think men, even the quote unquote good guys, if they really are quote unquote good guys, they should have an understanding of why you're averting your eyes from them, because they know that the most amount of like crimes against women are from men, or crimes against anyone, are like violent crimes against people are from men, just statistically. And we don't even need to say not all men. It's a big enough societal issue that we can say men do this. And I think the quote unquote good guys are gonna acknowledge, yep, yeah. And we could acknowledge that about white people too. If I hear someone shitting on white people, I'm like, hell yeah. That's correct.
Well, hey, talking about respect and respectful behavior, let's go back to your classroom.
Oh yeah.
How do you there, let's go back to your classroom. Thank you for letting me take y'all on this little off-roading expedition.
Love it.
How do you teach accountability and model respectful behavior in your classroom?
Yeah, that's really important to me. Honestly, a lot of what drew me to teaching kindergarten is the social emotional learning aspect of it. Obviously, SEL is important at every level, but kindergarten is really where we build those foundational skills. I do a lot of values work, especially through therapy. And one of my top 3 values is accountability, because I believe in a growth mindset. I believe that everyone can change, but an apology is entirely empty without changed behavior afterward. And that's really what I try to instill in my students, because at least from what I've witnessed over the past 10 years in education in some form, the amount of times I've heard an educator or an adult say you're sorry, say you're sorry. I'm like, what does that teach them though? Sorry is a word. It's not an action. So kind of a rule in my classroom that some people find strange is I do not require my students to say sorry. It's not a requirement. When harm has been done, the requirement is not that you say sorry. The requirement is that you check in with the person who you have caused harm to. And you say, we have a script. I have it on posters in the room with visuals. We start with, are you okay? How can I help you feel better? Right? And my students know that if they don't go check in with that friend, there are consequences, because we don't get to go through life harming people, whether it was intentional or not. We don't get to go through life knowing we caused harm and not doing something about it. Because we also, something that's ingrained in us and so many adults in this world too, is this idea that intent equals impact. It's not true. some people can be trying to say a really funny thing and it hits me and I'm like, ouch. Sometimes I could be trying to say a really funny thing and someone's like, nope, didn't like that. And how much better is it to say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for telling me. I'm going to change my behavior. I never thought of it that way. How much better is that than saying, well, I was just trying to tell a joke? How do we grow from that, right? And obviously they're kindergartners. I run into a lot of kids whining back at me like, I was just kidding. They're kids, but I don't stand for that. I have very firm boundaries in my classroom. Like, I point to the script. I say, the expectation. This is what we do here, or else we're going to have a one-on-one conversation at choice time. I use choice time as an incentive.
Love it.
Thanks. Yeah, some people don't like it, but I do think it models the world outside of school pretty similarly. Like, if you don't get things done or you don't do the things you need to do, whether that's academically, social, emotionally, or through work, you're not going to get to do other fun things later. So let's just do the thing. So some of my kids have an easier time with it than others. Like, some of my kids are on it. They're like, are you okay? How can I help? And other kids, they get overwhelmed with embarrassment that they hurt someone, or they get so bogged down with, but I didn't mean to, but I was just being funny, that they'll like cry in the corner, and I just keep my calm, even tone. I say, look at the script, check in with your friend. And I'll say that like 3 times. And if they're still frozen, like, hey, this is your choice. That means you and I will talk at choice time, and we'll see when you're ready to check in with your friend. So that's how I handle it. It's, I think, one of the most important things to me in my class. And I think it builds a culture of accountability and helps with growth mindset, both social, emotionally, and academically.
I love it. I think that every teacher needs to be going that route. And it's, it is one of those things, though, where it's tricky because you've got a whole lot of other stuff you need to be doing in your class during the day, teaching. And for all of these little moments of, morning recess, lunch, afternoon recess arguments or misunderstandings that are happening between these littles, and it's multiple times a day, that you've got to really train them early on with that script, with the hopes of them becoming independent, to use that independently early on in the year. Otherwise, it's such a time suck for you. And I'm presuming you don't have an aide with you in your classroom, do you?
I don't. It would be so nice if I did.
How many kids do you have? I'm curious.
Okay, I only have 12, which is great.
Oh my goodness. What?
Sometimes I am hesitant to tell people that because they're very envious of me.
Those are some private school numbers you got. What?
We just have, after COVID, the enrollment at our school just dropped. The only reason they don't close us down is because we're in an area of town that competes with 2 other districts, and our district wants enrollment to go to us. So we just kind of luck out with location, but our whole school is about 200 students.
Wow. That is insane to me. But
yeah, so I'm lucky. I could use an aide because 5 and 6-year-olds are a lot, but it's much easier to handle 12 5 and 6-year-olds than it is to handle 25.
I was going to say, let's be honest. When I was in kindergarten, when I taught kindergarten, there were, I want to say there were 28 of them.
I bless your heart.
Bless my heart, indeed.
I could not. I think they would get me an aide if our numbers went up, but it's fair that I don't have one. Sometimes I'm bitter about it, but then I'm like, you know what? There are people doing this without an aide with 28 kids. I need to count my blessings.
Yes, and the one thing I had going for me that year was we were only half-day kinder. Are you full day?
I am full day.
Okay. And that sucks. I don't think TK or kinder should be full day.
It's a lot. I lose them by 10 a.m. I feel like.
Well, and it's not even only about that. 100% it's about that, but not 100%, I guess, because I have something else to add. 50% it's about you losing them, but then also they are not able to do a whole lot independently. So the amount of prep kindergarten TK and kindergarten teachers are responsible for, you need the rest of the day to make all of your packets for them, to make all the materials.
And all the differentiation for my kids who use special scissors, and I need to make the pictures easier for them to cut out.
Yes.
Sometimes I have kids draw, but I have certain students who can't draw, but they can cut with the special scissors, so I have to print off scaffolds so they can cut and paste so they don't have to draw. Yeah, you get it. You get it.
Yes, it's a lot of prep work in TK and K especially, and in first grade too a little bit, but I love how you're teaching the intent versus impact. And I know that it's going to be helpful for the kids too in boundary setting later on. And also, I love that it helps kids move beyond the whole, well, I didn't mean it end to the conversation. Because in so many classrooms, and probably including mine a lot of years, when something would happen, and then the one kid who harmed unintentionally, always unintentionally, right? Another child, well, I didn't mean it. That's supposed to be the apology. Well, I didn't mean it. It doesn't matter if you meant it or not, what your intent was. What was the impact of what you just said or did, right?
Right.
So it's very important. I think you're doing great work.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
honestly, if I can tangent, you and I are big on tangents. We're getting to know each other. I think it sets the foundation for being able to take accountability when extra harmful things are said, right? At this point in their lives, one of the most harmful things they can do is like stick their tongue out at someone, right? That feels big to a 5-year-old, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. But I think about being a closeted kid in middle school, hearing everyone use gay as a slur, hearing my dad use gay as a slur, living in a big liberal city. I mean, the second I came out, my dad immediately stopped using it and he was mortified, which is great. But if I had had that language and if I had had the courage to be out in middle school, to be able to say, hey, when you describe something that's bad and you use the word gay to describe it instead of bad, that hurts me because I'm not bad. I'm just who I am. And I'm hoping, middle school is a different ball game, but I'm hoping that starting these kids off with these skills, they're able to have that language to say, hey, I know you didn't mean this. I see your intent was not this, but do you know what you mean when you're using that word? I'm hoping that I'm teaching my kids compassion and the ability to be the bigger person and recognize, you know what, I didn't mean that, but I hear you, I see you, I'll use a different word. In a perfect world. Probably won't be all my kids in middle school, but maybe some of them will remember being in Teacher Bex's class and remembering conversations of accountability and intent versus impact. I hope so.
I think they will. And this would be something great to get the rest of your colleagues on board with, right? So that they could continue teaching it all. Right. Could you imagine?
I would love that.
Yeah,
this maybe is a good idea.
You could do a PD on it, maybe.
Start scheming. Yes, I'll sign up for a PD.
And talking about your colleagues and other gay teachers, I know that being on a school campus can be a very lonely experience for gay teachers. I've made TikToks on this. I've been talking about it a little bit more lately, how I even went through these feelings of being invisible on my school campus. And it wasn't even a matter of just because of my queerness, but it's just when you're surrounded by straight people, a lot of straight people, and you're teaching all of this curriculum that doesn't affirm you or your existence, it's a very lonely, it's almost like this negating life experience, right? And then I was a cog in that wheel for so many years. I've had a lot of disappointment in myself these past few years when I haven't been teaching, and I've been reflecting on my career and thinking that if I were to go back, I would do things so differently. And I'm just wondering what advice you'd give to other queer educators struggling to feel safe or seen in their workplaces.
Yeah, the big question, and I'll try to answer as intentionally as possible. I'll preface by saying what I've said many times throughout our conversation by saying I am super privileged because of where I live, big liberal city in America. That makes a big difference. I've been in education for 10 years, and I started my education journey as a college student, and I was working in a preschool that had books like And Tango Makes Three and Julian is a Mermaid and other books that shared queer stories and queer characters. And I know that's the exception and not the norm in this country, especially how the country is now. So I'm very privileged in that even though it hasn't always been easy as a non-binary person, I have had a pretty easy go of it as a white queer teacher just because of where I live. So I will say my first piece of advice does come from a very privileged context. And obviously, this is not an option for everyone. But if you can get out of that red area, if it's really impeding your happiness, I get wanting to be there for the kids who need to see you. And if that's where you want to stay to be that, I salute you and I commend you. But I think as teachers, we often spend so much time putting admin and students and parents before ourselves that we forget what we need. And so I guess I would just encourage queer teachers out there who are having probably a worse experience than I am as a queer educator to ask yourself, do I feel safe here? Do I feel happy here? And even if you feel like you're leaving behind those queer kids who need someone, it's okay to put yourself first and go somewhere else because you're worth it. So if you have the ability to, it is an option. And then the other piece of advice I would give is if you're able to safely be yourself, be out, have a pride flag in your room, because it does mean a lot to kids. It means more than we could ever realize. And I just know that based on what kids have told me. So be yourself if it's safe. And if you're somewhere where you can't be yourself, if you're able to, it's okay to step away, because we can't put on our shoulders the task of being the singular representation for queer youth. It's just, it's too big a burden to carry. It's not our fault that queer kids don't feel seen in this country. It's a system, and it's not our job to do that work. It's the job of allies around us and this administration to get their act together and make the world a safer place. But you should not take that on as an individual.
I hear that. And I hope the rest of you listening hear that as well, especially if any of you are like me and are putting pressure on yourself to be that person.
Yeah.
Right. And then especially if we are on one hand living and working in fear, and then it's just such a mind fuck, right? I ended up feeling disappointed in myself. So to really echo what Bex just said, I think that a lot of the times we can put too much pressure on ourselves to be that representation for all queer kids, when in reality it takes a village.
Yes. Not our job.
Yeah, our society needs to step up, right? Where it's 2025.
Yeah, almost 2026, days away.
That's true. That's very true. On that same note, what changes would you like to see in the education system to better support LGBTQIA plus teachers and students?
Oh my gosh, let's just get with the times and just teach kids queer history. Oh my gosh, it's so erased, and it's such a big part of the world we live in, especially Black queer history. Let's, at the kindergarten level, I try to teach a lot about Black excellence, right? And Latina excellence and Indigenous excellence, because I think at that young age, it's just so important to be like, look at all these incredible people who have done incredible things and who don't look the same, but they've all been successful in different ways. And I do think as students get older, it's important to recognize, listen, these people had to fight like hell to be able to be seen and valued and be celebrated for their excellence. But I'm not seeing that done as much with queer people. I do see that basically every teacher at my school has books with LGBT representation, and that's amazing. And the academic standards for the state I live in does have the teaching of LGBT history as a requirement, but it's not embedded in the curriculum at every grade. And I firmly believe it is never too early to just start talking about queer people and queer history, because they exist. Your teacher is one. Your teachers at my school, so many of your teachers are in the LGBT community. You're around it every day. There's no reason we should be shying around that. So many people are just nervous that talking about queer people is inherently sexual. And it's like, no, that's not what being queer is about. There's such a stigma against the LGBT community that our community is just about sex, and it's not. It's about a vastness of identity and celebration of different ways to love. So yeah, it's never too early to start talking about it and just honoring the existence of queer people. And I would love to see social studies curriculums developed at every grade level where LGBTQ people are represented, not in a passive way, but in a, hey, this guy was gay, or this woman was a lesbian,
Right.
or this trans person was awesome. And like I said, at my school, in my district, I see a ton of teachers implementing their own books, but that's extra
Mm,
work. Like, let's
yeah,
have curriculums where that's just embedded. That's what I'd like to see.
exactly.
Sorry, another tangent. Is this cool?
Yeah, yeah.
This makes me think of another story from when I was a teacher's aide in a first grade. Yeah. So when I was a teacher's aide in a first grade classroom, there were these three best buddies in the class. It was two boys and one girl. And I remember the teachers would ship one of the boys and one of the girls, like, oh, they're going to get married one day. And I'm like, that's a fucking insane way to talk about children. And then I never said this, but in my head, I'm thinking, if your brain is going to go there, look at how these three kids actually interact with each other, right? Because those two boys are holding hands all the time. Those two boys, I have to tell to stop cuddling on the carpet all the time because for the love of God, pay attention. It's just interesting how straight people will be like, we can't teach about gay people, it's over sexualized, but they'll ship boy and girl children together. But even if it won't even cross their mind if two little boys are really physically close or two little girls are physically
Mm.
close. We gotta rewire our brains as a society.
Yes.
And it's a constant journey of unlearning. I'm a lifer on that journey. I will never be perfect, and the day I stop learning and becoming a better person is not one that's ever going to happen. I'm always going to be learning.
Well, so before we close and before I ask you my final question, if there's one message you want other teachers or students, blanket all of them, to take away about queerness in education, what would it be?
I kind of touched on this earlier, but I would just say LGBTQ educators and students and their families exist. We exist. Let's stop pretending like we don't. In red states, especially, and in this administration, let's stop pretending like we're not here because the more you try to silence us, the louder we're going to be. Pretending we don't exist isn't going to make us exist any less. Laws like the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida aren't going to make people less gay. We're always going to find ways to be ourselves. We're always going to find our ways to be present in the classroom. Nothing you can do is going to erase us. So stop trying. And I know that ended up being more of a message to the administration, but unfortunately, there are teachers out there who think we shouldn't be talking about LGBTQ plus issues, and that's simply not the fact. And you omitting that from your classroom doesn't omit the existence of queer students. I guarantee statistically, every educator in this country has a queer student in their class, whether they know it yet or don't.
Right.
But we're here and we're not going anywhere.
Exactly. Snaps to that. I've started snapping for some reason. I was never a sorority girl, but I don't know why I started doing that.
Well, honestly, did you know? Sorry, you want a little queer history lesson?
Okay.
Snapping started in 80s ballroom culture. It was like the way they like encouraged each other. So,
Oh, really?
yeah. So that's where that sort of applause came from. So especially with Black gay men, that was like the thing. It was also like a secret code. It was how Black gay men would signal to each other, like, "Hey, me too." And it is just evolved.
I love it. Thanks for bringing that in.
Of course, I'm a big snapper also.
Well, so what gay thing or things have you been doing lately?
Yeah, so I actually have a side gig. I perform as a drag king on the side. I've been doing that for about 8 years. I'm actually excited because I have a show coming up this weekend, and it'll be the debut of my drag queen persona, which is very exciting and weird and new. I've been leaning on a lot of my femme queer burlesque dancer friends to help develop that character. And it's been uncomfortable because I'm not a very feminine person, but it's been really fun to just lean on my femme queer friends and have them support me as I just take that journey. But I usually perform once a month as a drag king, excited to explore this drag queen character. And I'm hoping to hopefully merge my drag job and my teaching job at some point, host some drag story hours or something in my classroom once I'm have my footing a bit better in the world of education. I have been in education for 10 years, but I've only been an official classroom teacher for 2. So still finding my footing as a person with my own class. But my dream is to be able to do drag story hours and have my drag friends come in and read stories to my kids.
That's awesome. How many years do you need to work in your district before you have permanent status?
3.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm getting there.
Are your drag names up for share or?
Yes, absolutely. I'm also happy to share my Insta handle. My drag king persona name is Kingwa because my favorite food is quinoa. So Kingwa. If you
Oh
want to
wait,
find
how are you spelling the wa part? Is it not just
W
OA?
A, just
Oh,
W A. So it's King space WA. If you want to find me on Insta, see the drag king looks I do. It's KINGWADRAG. So at Kingwa Drag on Instagram, and you can follow along with my side gig there. But it's fun. All of my coworkers will come to my shows and stuff. We always have a whole table of educators cheering on. So it's fun. It's a fun way to merge my two worlds.
Nice. And what about your drag queen name?
Quinoa.
Quinoa.
It was easy. An easy switch.
You must really like quinoa.
I do. I had a bowl of quinoa porridge this morning. It's yummy.
You're funny. I used to have every morning before I'd go to work my bowl of quinoa.
Yes.
Almonds. I developed a very severe almond allergy though because I was eating so many almonds, almond milk, the almonds, almond butter.
Oh, I didn't know you could develop an allergy if you had too much.
Just an FYI to everyone. I don't know if I just have an overly sensitive system. I went into anaphylaxis one day.
Oh God,
and
casual.
Right? And then at the ER, they asked me what I'd eat, and I was telling them, and they said, well, it's probably the almonds. Don't eat them for a while and see if you're okay. I never ate them again. I haven't had the anaphylaxis. So, yeah, weird, no?
It is really weird. I appreciate that you used to eat quinoa every day for breakfast. Underrated breakfast food. Great source of protein. No one realizes.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Bex, you have been a delightful guest. I feel as though I've only been talking with you for 20 minutes.
Yeah, it flew by for sure. I love talking with you too, and I'm glad this podcast exists. I'm excited to share it with more queer educators and be like, hey, you should listen to this thing. It makes us all more connected. It's good. It's fun.
Thank you. Please do. You have been an amazing guest. Thank you so much for coming on. You are invited back anytime.
Hey!
And if there is a part 2 with Bex, y'all, what would you like to hear us talk about? And thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me. This was the best.
And here comes the outro music.
I don't know what it sounds like, but I just want to Lesbian Class Podcast.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Nice to talk to you.